online. Learn, unlearn, relearn.
All right, good afternoon. Let's see. The midterm is due close of business today, so if you're still frantically working on it, as some people are, maybe I should just be more strict. But hey, old dog, new tricks. If you're in Eugene on February 22nd, 4 p.m., The Black Revolution on Campus, book by Martha Biondi, talking about the BSU movement. She'll be presenting at 4 o'clock at the new Downtown Center, 101 West 10th Avenue, first floor, room 105. And there'll be also a panel with myself, among others, talking about ethnic studies, because ethnic studies came out of this particular movement, at least in the 20th century. So, be there or be square. All right. Before I get into, this is because this is ethnic studies, one of the things we cover is not necessarily in the traditional canon, of course. And this is not necessarily something you get in an economics course. One of the things we were looking at in the latter part of the 19th century with Indian nations was looking at the United States' active participation in the destruction of Indian nations. And it's not just a land grab. Okay? And the reason it's not just a land grab is because the Indian nations represent something that the United States is not. And one of those is evidence in terms of what the subject heading on this particular slide is, a gift economy. So if you were going to think about, okay, yeah, the Indians are living on this land, but what else do they represent? All right, so they represent a all adult, and adults start at 13, democracy. They have women leaders. They are generally anti-racist, anti-sexist, but we wouldn't conceive them on those terms. They weren't thinking about that then. That was just common sense. That's just the way they roll. There's a reason why, as an example, what is the center, what is the place in America most associated with our economy? Where is that financial center?
New York.
Where in New York? Wall Street. So the original wall on Wall Street was literally built by black slaves, white indentured servants, and it was to keep Native Americans out of that fledgling colony. Okay? That's what the wall was. Yeah, there literally was a wall there. But when you think about, wait, the wall isn't around the island. The wall is just basically around across one part of the island, and to keep Native Americans out so they could defend it. Now, if the natives wanted to attack the rest of the island by, by water, they could do that. But I'm focusing on that and on the symbolism. So what is it about native nations that they want to keep them out? Because what's happening is you got black slaves, you got white women, you got white men leaving the colonies to go kick it in Indian nations. So the Indian nations actually represent something that's not so much a military threat as a conceptual threat that we got to eliminate. I don't know, can we all get along? Guess not. All right? So you got women leaders, anti-racist, anti-sexist, and you have a gift economy. And I'm going to explain what that is. Okay, so all that has been going on for thousands of years. So here's one of the things that a gift economy is. All right? So because of the traditional canon's focus on 1492, we don't necessarily think of there being a civilization here. I may or may not have mentioned this before, but I had a discussion with a Tea Party member who's actually from Boston. And he didn't necessarily identify himself as a Tea Party member, but he was certainly espousing certain things, certain attitudes that are indicative of that particular framework. Which there's a broad representation anyway. So I said, all right, so what was the original Tea Party about? Right. Taxation without representation, right? And how was the principal protest enacted? What happened? Threw tea into the harbor. Who threw tea in the harbor? Bostonians. I'm not trying to be a stickler here, right? White Bostonians, right? Not Crispus Attucks. He'd already been killed in the Boston Massacre, right? Boston Tea Party, etc., right? So did they go in their own faces? In the mythology. Dressed up like Indians. Okay, so you got white people in Indian drag trashing British tea. Now, do you think the native, and so why are they doing that? Why do they think that would be safe? Well, you could blame it on the Indians, except the Indians don't have anything to do with the British, their tea, or taxes. In fact, in a gift economy, there ain't no taxes. No kings, exactly. They have sachems who are, responsible to the people, but it's not like it's royalty in the sense that, Europeans are used to thinking of royalty. So native nations had no taxes, but they were militarily powerful. That's why, so if I characterize the Tea Party as a dispute between two different groups of white people over economics, you got it, right? So when I was explaining this to this person who's from Boston, who, well, I don't know what the Tea Party is, because, I was educated in the juvenile justice system, not in high school. They didn't teach us that. Okay, well, I said, two different kinds of dispute between two different types of white people. One dressed up in Indian drag, because the Indians were a formidable military power. I said it exactly like that. And he goes, wait a minute, there was no civilization here. And that's fighting words to me. So I just go into, there was a civilization. That's why. If you get your ideas from movies, The Last Mohican, excuse me, they're a military power. What's happening between the French and the British? They're fighting this proxy war between different native nations who are aligned with one side or the other. Right. Okay. So a gift economy. So when we're talking about, go back to the slide if you would, thanks. The indigenous trade routes on Turtle Island did trade goods, but the currency besides the goods was a common coin of culture and healing. So reminders of a spiritually based economy. So you will find when you look at dictionary definitions of what an economy is, it's focused on, because this is a Euro-American axiology, it's focused on the material. It's about money, right? When I say the financial center, you go Wall Street. Immediately, without necessarily inquiring, where'd the wall in Wall Street come? Why is it called Wall Street? Is there some dude named Wall? No, there was an actual wall, right? Like, that's an interesting concept because that isn't going to really stop anybody. So why are they doing that? And why is that history hidden? All right? So in a gift economy, the medium of exchange is a gift that you give that enriches the spirit of the receiver. So automatically, this already means you actually have to perceive the spirit of the receiver and give a gift that will enrich them. So that means your culture has to believe in that so that the other person can recognize, oh, well, this is a gift. Okay? They have to reciprocate with a gift of equal or greater value. Also enriching you. Now remember, from a economic point of view, what any economist will tell you what an economy is and medium of exchange are. Basically, any money, any frog skins, as it were, are surplus work. Surplus work is basically, you gather your own water, your own firewood, your own food to take care of you and your family. Anything extra you have to give away. And then whatever medium of exchange you have is a symbol of a unit of work or something like that. Right? That's one way. That's basic economic theory. Well, they're not talking about what's happening necessarily in Turtle Island, because what is the value of an abalone shell versus an eagle feather or something like that, right? Or a story, right? So if it's reciprocating with a gift of equal or greater value, so for example, wampum is money that tells a story of our unity. Now, part of the idea behind these frog skins, okay, got a $1 bill, Georgie looking at me, Federal Reserve note. This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. You flip it over. In God we trust. The pyramid. New Order of the Ages, the Great Seal of America, we got an eagle, etc., right? Frog skins, as we in Indian country refer to them, right? Medium of exchange, right? Does this tell the story of our unity exactly? No. You have to be educated. It's just simply money, right? So wampum is money that tells the story of our unity. So it's not just a medium of exchange. So if you look at these trade routes, so I got this from the Cradleboard Project, which is, among other things, an attempt by Native Americans to basically tell this story in an electronic form to kids. So understand that if the ancient African word for this continent, Atalanta, means water and metal. What metal? Because we got copper in Africa, but there's copper here too. So major trade routes, and in white basically talks about copper trading, which means mining, and then being able to refine the rocks that you have, which means fire. So you got to burn the rocks to produce the metal, right, to trade. So, copper mining, obsidian mining, and other minerals. So other minerals could also be silver, turquoise, obsidian to make knives, obsidian to make arrow points, metal tools. So basically, if you understand what you need to make a pyramid, you need metal tools to cut the rock. So if you have a pyramid city somewhere, and there are a couple of them, Cahokia, as well as in Aztec country, as well as there is a history book that I have that I haven't used with this class yet, but basically the brother was talking about there's a pyramid on Ventura Boulevard, which if you know Los Angeles, you know, the paving stones of the pyramid were used to build Ventura Boulevard rather than preserve it as an archaeological site because, well, what's a pyramid doing in LA? And the type of pyramid that it was basically, he was saying, okay, there's an African origin here, and there are archaeologists that have talked about there have been an African presence on this continent before there was natives, but we'll give the natives credit for being here. But, you know, the idea is that there are ancient trade routes. So, for example, when we talk about the Dalles in Oregon was one of the major trade routes here in what's now America. This west coast, basically the Tlingit Haida, all the way from Alaska all the way down Canada, basically traded salmon streams, controlled salmon streams, so trading in fish. Chaco Canyon, Cahokia is a pyramid city, and as well as going down, you know, to Mayan pyramids and Tenochtitlan, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea, there are extensive trade routes going on, extensive trading going on internal to the continent, and in some cases with other cultures that are coming here, including the Chinese, including the Africans. So there's trade routes, there's civilization here going on, and an economy going on before 1492. So, for example, you could trade abalone shell for turquoise. Now, in our economy, why would you do that? Abalones are easier to, no, it wasn't about that relative worth. I mean, sure, abalone shells can wash up on the beach, but sometimes you have to fish for them. And particularly with certain West Coast tribes, there's a shell called dentalium that involves basically going down 60 feet to get it. That was also used as a medium of exchange. So abalone shell for turquoise, dentalium, salmon trading for animal pelts, copper for stone tools and stone cutting tools, wood for weapons, clothing for building materials or building techniques, trading feathers and turtle eggs, if you have that. So for example, the Taino, when at the time they made first contact with Columbus, these were folks, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but these are folks that farmed fish. They had nets and basically trapped fish within the nets. They cultivated turtle eggs, turtles. These are also folks that jumped on sharks. They hunted sharks from canoes. Okay, so Columbus saying, oh, well, these people are peaceful, they don't know, you don't, I ain't seen no white folks jumping on sharks from canoes. Sorry. They are kind of tough.
What happened to Columbus in here?
Hmm?
What happened to Columbus in here?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep. He did. So you can trade ideas, and ideas are also a currency in a gift economy. So this is an artist representation of an Aztec market in Tenochtitlan. So Tenochtitlan, near present-day Mexico City itself, was a pyramid city built on an artificial lake with a series of canals as well as streets. This particular market had separate streets for different goods and services. So, for example, separate street for different types of building materials, whether it's stone or bricks, different types of metals, different types of foodstuffs. So separate street for deer and venison, separate street for chickens, separate street for fish. You know, always built on canals, so with canoes and art and other kinds of, you know, textiles and other building materials. So there was trade with other native nations and other ethnicities from outside of Turtle Island at this place. So when Cortez, for example, visited Tenochtitlan in the 1500s, he was like amazed to see this, and he said there was nothing like this in Europe at all, which was accurate, because Europeans aren't building pyramid cities on artificial lakes, among other things, and they had marketplaces, but not this extensive. So to trade, you have to have something of value to trade with. And so one of the things that I was talking about, especially with a particular tribe or nation of Black Indians, the Pequot were like the Federal Reserve Bank for the East Coast, for Turtle Island, because they were the keepers and makers of wampum. All right? So wampum is, as defined by Wikipedia, a string of creamy white colored shell beads fashioned from the North Atlantic channeled whelk, traditionally used by indigenous Americans, First Nations people, Native Americans who regarded it as sacred or trade representative of the value of the artist's work. It's also used for engagement, marriage, betrothal agreements, as well as ceremony and condolence ceremonies. All right? So this is not like our concept of dollar bills at all. Okay? It's sacred. It's a gift. All right? And so part of it is like, if you see these two figures woven from shell, it's basically a story that goes with the money, the wampum. That you have to know the story. So the shells symbolize internal energies of peace, harmony, and contentment. It's often confused with sawant, which symbolizes the outside energies of a system, that is a system of either governance or the economy itself. Wampum beads are made from that whelk. Sawant beads, black or dark, are made from the pocohawk, commonly known as the quahog, or Western and North Atlantic hard-shell clam. So anyway, basically talking about the trade of that. So by the time of the arrival of the Europeans, Pequots used their dominance of tribes around the area to gain control of the sources of the beads. So that's what I'm saying. Pequots were essentially the Federal Reserve Bank for Indian country on the East Coast, which means, therefore, if you're going to destroy their economy, you basically have to come after them first. And this was done. Okay, so they were targeted for destruction and enslavement. They were enslaved with Africans, making them today one of the largest tribes of Black Indians, who now, ironically, own one of the largest casino complexes on the planet. So when you think of wampum as a memory, and you think of, all right, if you build an economy based on remembering history, and that's central, and then it gets replaced by a civilization that forgets, that erases history as its very basis, you can see part of where the problem comes. All right, in a gift economy. Oh, well, here we use these frog skins without understanding what an economy is. Oh, all I know is I just need some, and more is better. And, you know, life is like eating a manure sandwich. More bread you have, less manure you eat. Right? More is better. Instead of looking at, okay, what if I had intrinsic value, and how would I enhance my spirit? How do I do that? It does sound like insanity, right? Within that particular framework, right? So I'm going to skip over this and leave it up for you to read later. But the idea, the medium of exchange. So whether it's frog skins, greenbacks, wampum, cowrie shells, okay, money, surplus work. Okay, so if you have a skill like hunting, like farming, net making, as an example, did you make your own cell phone or computer? This is a thing that I talk about. One of my pet peeves with rappers. Rappers are not readers. Great, you can use a computer, but you can't program the computer. You can't make your own computer. What would a hip-hop computer programmer look like? See, if you don't create, if you're just depending on somebody else's technology that you don't make, that you don't understand, you're controlled by that technology. Straight up. And if you don't know how to create the infrastructure, where are you at? I mean, this weekend, some of us were at a conference at the U of O. I mean, Dead Prez broke down a lot of stuff. But again, how do you create all that stuff if you're relying on technology that you neither understand nor read about? Now, I mean, they were talking about this whole anti-intellectual thing within hip-hop. Like, y'all don't know where you came from? That this is the continuation of a 10,000-year-old movement? That the people that you're emulating were not only literate, they were multilingual. And they played instruments. I mean, okay, turntable is kind of an instrument. Yes, a DJ has to mix lots of different forms of music without being able to create it, but using a technology that they may not use. They may not understand how to generate it from scratch. Okay, there's a reason why turntables are considered an instrument. That's because they destroyed the music program so that you didn't learn how to play instruments. Because they know if you learn to play instruments, that makes you more intelligent. It develops another section of the brain. They don't want you becoming intelligent. So let's destroy the music programs. So you don't have a means of expression. Naturally, we come up with another way of improvising that. So in terms of looking at an economy, did you make your own cell phone or computer? Could you repair it if it broke? Or is it about buying a new one? Yeah. Say that again, though.
Geek Squad.
Yeah. Geek Squad, right. So when we're talking about when Obama's first term, basically they were talking about the economy's in the toilet. Let's have shovel-ready projects ready to go. We have public infrastructure that needs funding. So when you think about what labor is conceived of, you're essentially trading hours of your life for a frog skin wage. Skilled labor, this is basically layers of an economy. Skilled labor is specialized ability acquired from specific training. Often we think about these within the trades, plumbing, carpentry, etc. Okay? Unskilled labor, basically anybody with an idiot stick, i.e. a shovel with an idiot at the other end of it. Just need strong body to do it. And then we have these distinctions about blue collar work, this factory work, pink collar work done by women, usually manipulating information, word processing, phones, etc., white collar labor. So there's class distinctions built into this and disparities. Okay, with white collar labor, that means, I'm wearing a business suit and I think with my mind, I don't actually get my hands dirty. not even writing my own memos. That's what the pink collar's for. And then the blue collar is, so we have class distinctions with all this, right? In a gift economy, they don't have those kind of class distinctions. You just do what you do. But there's another piece in terms of, and this is one of the things I talk about with hip hop, as an example, is could you rebuild civilization if it collapsed? Could you rebuild civilization? KRS-One came through here about half a decade ago, basically said,
Oh, wow.
right? And so he said, and this is why I go off on this particular subject, because there was somebody with him, claimed to be his road manager, and he said, I think his name, he called himself Rewind or something like that. So KRS and I had been talking about, okay, what books have you read and all that kind of stuff, and discussing about Kwame Ture and all these folks. And then, he left the room, and so I was talking with this kid, 20-something, and I said, okay, so you're from Lamar Park in LA, your name's Rewind. So what have you read? You heard our conversation. What have you read? He said, I'm a rapper, not a reader. Wait, you're the teacher's road manager, and you come off with that? Wow. So Chris was talking about, what if hip hop was the seeds of a new civilization? So I kind of ran with, all right, if hip hop is the seeds of a new civilization, then it better be literate, because we've already seen what happens when you don't have a literate society. People don't know how to build sewage treatment plants. Who's taking out the garbage? Right? Because from the native point of view, this civilization, we didn't have trash before the United States. And now we got an island bigger than England with trash in the middle of the Pacific. Oh, is it bigger than England or Texas now? Okay, it's bigger than Texas now. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, trash. Okay, so American capitalism based on chattel slavery. When Marx, basically, who has one set of understandings about, in terms of critiques of capitalism, two pieces to what he calls a primitive accumulation of capital, which is what he calls slavery. That is, people are the capital. Human beings are objects of worth, right? So first, American capitalism is based on the concept that people have relative value, that they're property. And necessary to that, the creation of categories and hierarchical degrees, hierarchy like high and low, degrees of oppression and privilege. Higher up you are, the more privilege you have, the more power, the more valuable you are. Lower, less value, less power, less privilege. And it's integral to maintaining that economy. All right, so if you had to work for an hourly wage, so as an example, when Obama talked about in the State of the Union address, right? Talked about raising the minimum wage to $9 an hour. So if the minimum wage had actually kept up with inflation, what should it be? I've heard $30 an hour. Okay? So working full-time at a minimum wage job does not pay the bills for a lot of people, especially if they have a family. Working 2 or 3 jobs, and that's why you see people working 2 or 3 jobs. So certainly at this school, you see people working 2 or 3 jobs and raising kids and trying to keep up with a full load of classes.
They divided the wealth equity. We'd all be making $250,000 a year.
Huh. Okay. That's 300 million people? 250,000? Wow.
You ever get there's a program on the radio
Mhm.
Everybody, little kids are already learning that.
Yes.
It's actually pretty much born into being in a home.
Could be potentially, yes. Yes, that is true. All right. So Marx's solution, of course, was, to the degree that their solutions is that, the people have to rise up and throw off their oppressors and etc. Which, a lot of, if you look at some of the working models, I think some of the better working models are not coming out of, they're coming out of where people of color basically taken that idea and adapted an indigenous concept before capitalism attempted to do that. So, American capitalism then depended on destroying that gift economy. That gift economy depended on a shared reverence for history, culture, and a common desire for mutual enrichment and strength. So, for example, then, the Latin phrase caveat emptor, let the buyer beware, means that one person wants to cheat another out of lack of respect or desire to cheat someone to one's own advantage. So which of your relatives do you want to see weaker? So that's coming from two different views of what an economy is and human nature, right? So in order to have an America, you basically had to destroy a competing idea that's based on mutual human respect. And to whatever degree that we might talk about mutual respect, we still have this underlying structure that's against that. So, dictionary definition of economy, production and consumption of goods and services for a community regarded as a whole, prudent management of resources to avoid extravagant expenditure or waste, a sparing, controlled, efficient use of something, a saving or attempt to reduce expenditure. See economy class, a system of interacting elements, especially when seen as being harmonious, a management of a household, etc. So notice this is basically still focused on the physical. No history, no culture, no spirituality, no, let's say, I think we're talking about the triple bottom line these days in design. That is, it has to be sustainable, has to be ecological, and has to be equitable. And we're building something, building a building, or building things that are relating to the economy. So this is basically just looking at how an economy is, but when color comes in, or your concept of race, because capitalism, certainly in America, also not only depends on a class hierarchy, but looks at a racial and gender hierarchy too. So, are Cardinals better than Ravens? I'm not talking about the sports team. Are robins better than hummingbirds? So when color comes in as a meme, and when color is used to divide or designate. So as an example, blue for boys, pink for girls. Okay, is one better than the other or just different? So blue, pink, white collar labor. All right, so we've had these hierarchies, and that's why I'm trying to hint at, red better than black, red better than, robin's better than hummingbirds. They both kind of sing, but so. Blue collar, skilled manual labor usually has been stereotypically male, except for in wartime when we were sending the men off to fight in wars, and then we allowed Rosie the Riveter to integrate the workplace. All right, pink collar, female administrative assistants. Okay, so that's manual labor, moving electronic information. Now, can men do that? Theoretically, but how many men do you see applying for administrative assistant jobs? And why not? Right? What's office culture, and who set the culture of office culture? Where did that come from? And how does that fit in the economy? So I'm just calling this stuff in the idea because the reason that we're looking at this in the early 20th century is now we've shifted from a rural agrarian economy to the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and now into office culture. The beginnings of office culture. All right, so white collar work is work done with the brain, and who's wearing a white collar, and then who is the stereotypical white collar worker? And what color is, oh, he. Okay, so who takes out the garbage? The man? Okay. Okay. Who cooks, serves, cleans, does the dishes? Really? Okay. Who grows the food? Who owns the farm? Who builds the shelter? Who owns the shelter? All right? The reason I'm talking about this is between the gift economy and capitalism, right? In the gift economy, who takes out the garbage? Well, we're not making garbage, so everybody's trained to basically use, if we kill an animal, we use the entire thing, all of it. And what isn't being used is going to be used for compost. Whatever. Say again? Recycling, right.
Spiritual purpose.
Right. No waste. Use it all. Right? Who cooks, serves, cleans, does the dishes? Well, it depends. But yeah, if we're going to have a division of labor that's gender-based, it's the farmers who are feeding people and the people who make nourishment. That's a sacred position. Who grows the food? Who owns the farm? Who builds the shelter? Who owns the shelter? Who takes care of children? Who takes care of elders? Who delivers health care? Okay, how are they all compensated and who decides? Right, so, if I were going to repose the question about, okay, if hip-hop is the seeds of a new civilization, answer them. What's the answer look like? And how are you replicating the old oppressive system and creating a new one under freedom? Because civilization does come down to these things. All right, so for example, when we talk about, especially in capitalism, especially in the 21st century, when we talk about the market, who is the market? Who decides who gets to be in the market? The reason I'm asking this, okay? You may or may not know this, but I had to as a drug counselor because I have people go out into the community and say, okay, notice where there's alcohol advertising. Notice what forms of alcohol are available in which neighborhoods. Is there a class divide? Okay, when you walk down the ethnic section of the grocery store, whose foods are ethnic? Mexican and Asian. Wait, you mean white people ain't an ethnicity? What about the pasta section? You mean Italians ain't ethnic? Who decides that? Now, not only who's on the shelf, but maybe you may not know that those companies are paying for that shelf space. They're paying the store. And you don't get to be in that store unless you pay or people ask for you by name. And then you have to supply sufficient product to make it worth their while. Like, check it. How many of you been to Trader Joe's? Okay, so did you know that Trader Joe's, if you were going to have, like Cafe Yum had yum sauce, and so in order to sell to Trader Joe's, they had to actually rebrand that yum sauce and be able to supply every Trader Joe's in the country, not just here. Okay? Kesey's Nancy's yogurt is now the French country village yogurt at Trader Joe's. Right? Well, they've been that for several years now, but you understand, in order to participate in the market, right, that ain't no accident. You have to be big enough to participate in the market, and that doesn't mean everybody. That just means them that's paying and can demonstrate a need, right? So again, understanding how, all right, if you're going to do your little, especially in the hip hop context when we're talking about, okay, so is it my space and my Facebook page that's selling my music, or do I go for a major record deal? Major record companies are becoming a little bit more irrelevant now because of electronics, but again, who's deciding who gets in the market, and does the best music get recorded or not, and who decides that?
And there's still distributors.
Yeah, and there's still distributors and all that, right? So for example, I think we talked about this already, but so that's set in context for the early 20th century, looking at voting and all that, and Maggie Walker, top named president of St. Luke's Bank and Trust Company, the first black woman to head a bank. So when I talked about, okay, what would it take to start a bank? And I did mention locally, the former OUR, Oregon Urban and Rural Credit Union, which is now, I think, Northwest Credit Union. They got eaten by them or something like that. But if you wanted to start a bank with you and your friends, how would you do that? You know how to do that, because banks come from somewhere. So the founding of the NAACP, the Urban League. All right. So I wanted to look at, have you look at in terms of another form of discriminator that comes, and it's our drug laws. And the reason I'm doing this is because our drug laws start in this time. Just before the turn of the century and early into the 20th century. So in order to talk about this, I had to I didn't notice anybody talking about this, so created a construct called axiochemistry, which basically took Edwin Nichols' axiology and applied the ideas that each culture has its own drug technology based on its axiology, and then moving from there. All right, so that there's 7 uses of drug substances. All right, so from medicine to weapon. So for example, you could say, and you could make the case that all civilization is an attempt to create safety for pregnant women and children. Food supply, hygiene, healthcare technology. Okay? Trying to reduce a high infant mortality rate. Making sure mom and baby are healthy. You don't do that, you don't have a civilization. By definition, you cannot have a civilization without women. So it's not presuming that you have only heterosexuals, et cetera, but basically civilization is protecting pregnant women and young children. And then you add on stuff to that basic goal. It has to be pro-survival, right? So, many cultures and tradition, it's the women who are developing the drug technology. Okay, in terms of herbs, in terms of different things, right? So they're the ones that are setting the policy. So if you're talking about ancient Euro-American culture, You're talking about the wise women. They were referred to as wise women. So, for example, the wise women basically have herbs and other things, and they also create, I'm talking about the Irish, whiskey, which you anglicize then into whiskey. Okay? And whiskey comes from what? Barley, grain, like beer, barley, right? So whiskey basically comes from an agricultural surplus. In fact, all alcohol comes from an agricultural surplus. So there's a rule today in Ireland and Scotland. No one makes whiskey till everyone has bread first. Who would make a rule like that? Women or men? Okay, earlier point. Okay, civilization, okay, is to protect pregnant women and children, and it's probably good if you have the women make the rules. What works for you? All right, and any civilization that's older than 1,000 years does that, so that you have more of an egalitarian civilization. That's, okay, women are calling the shots because, look, this is the way it's going to be. You boys go play. All right, so medicine. So in this context, whiskey becomes like a sacrament. So medicine, the first use of a drug is usually a medicine for healing the body or something like that. A sacrament, basically, sacrament literally means sacred mind. So then you're going to basically have the use of a substance in religious or spiritual ceremonies. Now, those two uses basically become the rule until you get to a certain level of complexity. All right? Now, some people will say, oh, well, I'm doing this for artistic inspiration. Like I really do, play, write, or create better under the influence of whatever their particular thing is. And so it would be, like today it might be weed, in a previous day it might be laudanum or, other drug substances, absinthe, opium, whatever. Peyote, whatever your thing is, right? An artistic inspiration, which means then you need to that leads to another use, leisure. Once people are basically this concept of leisure, what that means is this is time that you have to mess around where you ain't working and you aren't having to deal with survival issues. Now, lots of people and cultures of tradition have this kind of time because they're not necessarily hunting all the time. They might be kicking back. So, leisure. But in civilizations based along our lines, because remember I had to create this to explain people's ideas about what drug substances are and their place in them in contemporary 20th and then 21st century society. So then, once something becomes a source of leisure, then it also becomes a source of wealth. Or as Marx referred to religion, an opiate of the masses. Okay, literally, for stress relief. All right, so some of these commodities under source of wealth include rum, tobacco, cocaine, slaves. The Golden Triangle is basically an area in Asia that produced very high-grade heroin. The Emerald Triangle, of course, in California, which produces, among other things, high-grade marijuana, as well. It used to be wine country, but yeah. All right.